Hello, hello. So, today's topic is a theme I see often with my female clients, which makes sense, and you'll see why as we get into it. Today, I want to talk about what's often referred to as selflessness. However, I like to refer to it as self abandonment because I feel like that language, calling it self abandonment, gives it kind of the magnitude and accuracy it deserves. Selflessness in our culture is often seen as a virtuous or honorable attribute, especially if you're a woman. The dictionary defines selfless as having no concern for self. And in modern context, this is often seen as righteous because the idea is that selfless people are more concerned with the needs and wishes of others than with their own. Which sounds like a beautiful thing in theory. It should make the world a better place if we all cared about each other that way, right? And I can understand that appeal. In fact, I was kind of indoctrinated with this belief in my childhood. My mother was a very selfless woman who put everyone's needs above her own. And my mother was my favorite person in the entire world, who I still love dearly. And respectfully, I will be actively teaching my son and hopefully future children to end this legacy of selflessness, to stop abandoning themselves for the sake of everyone else. And the reason isn't because I believe we shouldn't care about other people's needs and desires. I love supporting people. I love being there for them. I am a coach after all. It's one of my favorite joys. And I love the idea of everyone caring for each other and supporting each other. But the only reason I can be so connected, caring, and present with other people and their needs is because I truly value honoring my own needs. I will explain what I mean, but first I need to back up a bit and describe more of what self-abandonment is and how it impacts our lives. There are some loose, varying definitions out there, but how I'm defining self-abandonment as it shows up for my clients is when either your needs are unknown or valuing your needs is unsafe. So you value other people's needs more. These needs can show up as, opinions, thoughts, feelings, beliefs, decisions, goals. When you self-abandon, you're abandoning your needs and valuing other people's needs more, making yours less valid or meaningful than others. Now, you might like to object and say, hey, just because I'm concerned with the needs of others more than my own doesn't mean I consider mine as invaluable. I still think my needs are worthy. And to which I would like to offer, okay, you can think your needs are valuable, but regardless, you're still believing that they are less valuable than others. And I want to talk about how that impacts your relationship with yourself. When you self-abandon, which again is essentially rejecting your needs, you basically desert yourself and you start to damage your relationship with yourself. After so many times of ignoring, not meeting, disregarding, or considering your needs as less important, what happens is you start to value yourself less, subconsciously, of course. After so many times of suppressing your needs, of putting others' needs above yours over and over, you start to see yourself as less valuable, less important, less central, and definitely less clear and known. What often happens is you start to suppress yourself so much that you lose connection with your capital S self, your true self, your inner knowing, your essence, your soul, however you want to define it. The truest and highest version of you. You start to lose your connection with that version of you. You lose yourself. You might feel like you don't really know who you are. Often this self-abandonment, when we don't even know or understand our needs, or when we feel like we're not even worthy to have our needs known or met, results in two major relationship breakdowns: by devaluing ourselves and then by distrusting ourselves. So devaluing yourself is when we subconsciously believe that I'm not worthy enough to have needs or make my needs known. So we don't honor them. We recognize them as invalid. We don't see them as worthy. And sometimes we don't even acknowledge that they exist. So this can show up in multiple ways. This can show up as like hiding parts of yourself, whether that's hiding your thoughts or feelings or what you're doing that you think, because you think these parts are unacceptable when you're with other people. It looks like suppressing or denying your needs or interests to please others, to be accepted by others. And sometimes suppressing your feelings can look like taking mood-altering substances like drugs and alcohol, and even food can help soothe and suppress feelings altering your mood. It can show up like manipulation, like not acting according to your values. It can show up in terms of manipulation. So when you're not acting according to your values, if you don't do things, it can show up in manipulation. So it looks like not acting according to your values. You're doing things to please others, even if it goes against your beliefs and values, because you're so disconnected from yourself that you actually don't even know what your values are or see them as worthy. And often this happens in like cults, which cults are like this tragic phenomenon, which will always fascinate me. But it's really when you're just so disconnected from yourself and you just value other people's values more. This can show up in codependent relationships when you're focusing on someone else's needs, wants, and problems and neglecting yourself. It can show up as kind of being like a doormat, like not speaking up for yourself or not asking for what you need or not setting and enforcing boundaries and letting people kind of take advantage of you. So if devaluing yourself is when we subconsciously believe I'm not worthy enough to have needs or know my needs, distrusting yourself is when we subconsciously believe I'm not capable of meeting my needs. And this can show up as doubting yourself, second-guessing yourself, overthinking, ruminating, letting others make decisions for you and assuming they know more than you, giving away your autonomy to others. This can show up in perfectionism, if you diminish or discount your accomplishments or skills because you don't see them as valuable or as good enough, regardless of what you accomplish. This can show up when that criticism and judgment, that inner critic, by saying mean things to yourself, by shaming and judging yourself when you don't meet painfully high standards for yourself. It can show up by giving up on your goals and interests and dreams and desires entirely because you don't think you can do it, that other people will always do it better, so why even try? A severed relationship with yourself, which is what self-abandonment entails, causes you to see yourself as less known, less valuable, and less trustworthy than other people because you're abandoning or staying ignorant to the truth of who you are in order to be considered worthy and lovable by others, ultimately so you can feel safe. Which leads me to how self-abandonment begins, which is usually in childhood. It often comes about when our parents or other influential adults didn't meet some or all of our emotional or physical needs, essentially abandoning or rejecting those needs, making us feel unworthy of having them or even knowing them, or unworthy to meet them, because when we're young, we are actually unable to meet those needs on our own. We need adult caregivers to meet them for us. Self-abandonment is a learned behavior, a way we try to cope with an environment that didn't provide maybe the safety, the concern, or the space we needed for our needs to be known, valued, and met. Ultimately, in either a small way or a very large way, we learned to hide or disconnect from our true self. We learned to hide or shut down our needs, opinions, thoughts, beliefs, interests, goals, because they weren't seen as valuable or credible or relevant as others. And sometimes we would suppress and hide them, kind of shove them down or act like a chameleon and adopt whatever beliefs and values were considered valuable to the family system we were in. And if we didn't do that, we might have been ridiculed, or we might have experienced physical or emotional pain through abandonment. So being true to ourselves felt unsafe in a lot of ways. So we learned to suppress and reject ourselves because that's what we were taught to do, and adopt the accepted or valued beliefs and needs of others just so we can feel safe, albeit inauthentic. And how does this suppression and rejection, this inauthenticity of our true selves, impact our lives now as adults? As adults, if we don't do the inner healing work, we can repeat those types of patterns from childhood because they're familiar. So we might choose partners and friends who mistreat us or take advantage of us or who don't support us. And we do the same to ourselves. And we don't know how to be there for ourselves. without condition, meaning we might only be kind to ourselves if we achieve or act a certain way. And often we do this because no one was unconditionally there for us as children. Self-abandonment can contribute to our own anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, and unfulfilling relationships. Because we reject ourselves, we don't actually know ourselves. So being alone with ourselves can feel unsettling and unfamiliar. This leads many of my clients to numb or distract with food when they're alone. Often people who struggle with binge eating, when we're distracted, like life is really busy at the moment or fulfilling in other ways, like we have a new love maybe, or a new city, or a fulfilling career, or some great friendships, or just maybe just starting motherhood where we're kind of excited but overwhelmed with that, we don't feel the urge to binge. But, for example, when COVID forced us all to slow down and hunker down at home with ourselves, it caused so much discomfort and agitation because being with ourselves is hard when it's unknown. It causes us to sit in this kind of dissonance of not knowing and not liking or valuing ourselves, but not wanting to admit that or feel that pain. So subconsciously, a part of us might believe that our needs aren't worthy to be known or met. So sitting alone in that unworthiness without distraction and outside forces of comfort and affirmation can feel really scary and even unsafe. But through that scariness and discomfort is where we grow. Have you ever heard of AFGO? It stands for another fucking growth opportunity. And being alone with ourselves is a great way to experience AFGO. It is not fun, I will tell you, but it is a great way to grow. And if our relationship with ourselves is solid, obviously it's not uncomfortable to be alone with ourselves. But when it's not solid, oof, it can be miserable. And a big part of self-growth and development is being able to be alone with ourselves, because when we can't, that's typically when we'll find destructive or exhausting distractions that don't serve our lives, like binging, and take away our power. The bottom line is that abandoning ourselves may have been a necessity during childhood, but it isn't helpful anymore, and actually it's holding us back and keeping us stuck in destructive, numbing, or escaping behaviors. So let's look at how you can begin to be with yourself instead of abandoning yourself. Because we were, subconsciously taught to ignore, devalue, and distrust ourselves, we have to consciously learn and try to get to know, value, and trust ourselves, which even just saying it out loud can be so overwhelming to imagine. But it doesn't have to be that daunting, truly. If you think it's too big, you won't even want to start. So my advice is to kind of take any step closer you can to getting to know your true self and know that can make a significant impact on your life. So here are some small steps and some larger steps to consider to help you on your journey to feel more connected, more in touch with your true self. First, take some personality tests. Like, I know Enneagram is really popular and I like that one. Or tools like astrology could be really great starting points. These things don't necessarily, in my opinion, define your core or your soul, but they can help shed some light on where you are right now and bring about some life-changing awareness that can be very helpful. You could create safe spaces, when you can be creative, quirky, or just uniquely you. So you're not with other people, but you're just kind of safe to explore who you are, explore your personality. What would it feel like to have your inner child have full reins for a moment? You could learn what your values are. Values are beautiful beacons that can kind of guide you in your decision making. You can Google list of values and find some that really stick out. Start with ones that are like, wow, yes, this is a value of mine. And then just note maybe this is a value ones. And when looking at your values, ask yourself if you truly like them. How do they make you feel? We just want to make sure we're not adopting the same ones that were given to us in childhood just because they're familiar. We want to make sure they're uniquely true to you. You could start becoming aware of your beliefs and opinions. You could write a list of things you believe to be true. Then take a look at that list and ask if they feel good. You might not know what it means to have beliefs that feel good to you, which is fair. So it can be helpful, in my opinion, you might think this is weird, but it can be helpful to think of it as like, does it feel warm? Sometimes we have strong belief systems that feel true, but they kind of feel cold or maybe like a little bit brass. So maybe those are just beliefs that you've adopted without truly believing them. So sometimes using the language of warm and cold can be a helpful compass. Just an idea. You could start becoming aware of your feelings. What does anger feel like in your body? What happens to your body when you get anxious? How do you express sadness or disappointment? Sometimes we don't really feel our feelings, but instead just react to them. That's okay for now. How do you react when you feel certain feelings? All we're doing right now is gathering information and trying not to judge or criticize that information. When you feel negative emotions, can you stay with yourself? Can you comfort yourself? What would that look like? Can you be with the emotion? Can you recognize the pain and honor it, not by shooing it away, but emotionally holding yourself while you're in it? We all have different parts, different thoughts, different voices within us that want different things at different times. Can you sift through those and identify which one is the real you? You'll have parts of you that are coming from places of fear, parts of you that are coming from places of hurt. Can you discern which voice is the real you? And can you start leading from that voice? Can you start helping those hurt parts? Can you start to console or comfort or encourage them or understand those parts? Can you trust yourself enough to reach out for help when you need it? Can you pay attention to what you truly like, desire, and enjoy? When you want or like something, how does that feel in your body? Can you appreciate who you are? Can you see the value that you bring to relationships and to the world, even if those things feel really small or insignificant? Can you give yourself a moment of self-compassion? Can you experience how good it feels? Can you understand that your needs are as valuable as other people's needs? Can you open the door to trusting yourself? What would it feel like to confide in yourself and have your own back? Can you realize that you deserved to feel valued and seen in your childhood? And can you value and see that inner child now as an adult? You know, we thrive when we've cultivated a loving relationship with ourselves. Even if it feels uncomfortable and we're not entirely sure how to do it, I invite you to start showing up for yourself, to start allowing yourself to freely express yourself, and to recognize that you are completely 100% worthy just as you are. When we do this, we're able to be alone with ourselves. We're able to be less dependent on outside sources like food or affirmation from others to make us feel okay or like we're enough. When we stop abandoning ourselves, we're able to connect, care for, and be fully present with other people and their needs because we trust and value ourselves enough to share that trust and value with other people who need it. I don't think there's a final destination as to when we have a solid relationship with ourselves. But I know the more we pour into us, the more we turn toward instead of away from us, the more solid, more reliable, and steady we are to stand strong amidst the upheavals and the messiness of life. If you're done abandoning yourself when discomfort arises and want to instead learn how to stay with and honor yourself through the discomfort, I'd love to help you one-on-one. Schedule a free call to learn about my 12-week End Secret Binging program, which will help you pour into yourself in a way that can bring about some much needed healing. Visit Sammy B Coaching, that's SAMMYBEE coaching.com, and schedule a free consult to learn more. That's it for now. See you next week.